What's going on YouTube? My name is Boy Luca. I am here to do a real basic tutorial on how to record an external instrument like a piano or guitar or whatever synth into Logic Pro. I'm mainly doing this for my dad. This is, he has Logic Pro and he feels frustrated using it because it's complex. It's not very easy to understand unless you learn about it. So I'm doing this to try to explain to him how he can get his Roland piano sound out into his interface and into Logic Pro. So the first thing we want to do before we even open Logic Pro is we want to go to our system settings here. Okay, so for me today, I'm using an Apollo Twin X as my interface. You could be using an Arturia Mini Fuse or a Motu M4 like my dad is. On general settings, you want to look at your sound. On system settings, you want to click on sound right here and make sure your output Universal Audio Thunderbolt and your input Universal Audio Thunderbolt are set. So this right here could be your Motu M4, your Mini Fuse, but make sure it's set to the same one on both your outputs and inputs. Now that we got that out of the way, we can open up Logic Pro. Okay, so once Logic Pro opens, sometimes it'll ask you different things. It'll pop up with different things than you see how my screen is right now. So I'll show you what that looks like. So for me, I set Logic when I click on the icon here. When it opens, it does nothing. I have to tell it what to do. Sometimes it'll have you open up a template, it'll ask you what you want, it'll open up your most recent session, something like that. And you can change what it'll do on startup by clicking Logic Pro, going to settings, clicking general, and startup action. You can have it set different things for it to do. So that's how you change that. So before we even start a session 2, let's make sure that Logic Pro is set to our interface as its audio input and output source. So go back to Logic Pro settings, click audio, and on your output device and input device, you want it to be the same thing. For me, it's the Universal Audio Thunderbolt. For you, it might be the Mini Fuse, the Motu, the Scarlett, whatever it is. Make sure your output and input devices are set to the same thing. We're good to go. So now we go to File, New. It's going to ask what kind of track you want to use. You want to use a software instrument, a pattern, session player, audio. I have personally never ever clicked pattern. Never done it. Always went to audio or MIDI. Never done it. But for us today, we want this SE1, this machine right here. We want this guy to be in our Logic Pro. So with an external instrument, you're going to need an output source coming into your input, right? So you could take a cable like this, a TRS cable. Take one from the output of your machine. It could have one output, it could have two outputs. If it has one output but it's a stereo source, it might be a summed output, and you might want to make sure to get a TRS cable that's capable of carrying a stereo signal instead of a mono signal, which is like this one. You can tell a difference because it's got one ring here, one black ring, and this one's got two. Could entirely be wrong about that. I went to school for it. I don't know if it's showing. Anyway, what I have is the output of the SE1, and I'll show you guys the way I hook up the cables right after I explain this. But I take the output of the machine, whatever it is, synth, piano, whatever, and I plug it into input 1 on my machine. It could be whatever input you want. Now on some interfaces, they don't have dedicated instrument ports for input. Sometimes they look more like this, where it's a mic input but it has an instrument port in it. You can still plug it directly in the middle, right? But you're gonna wanna hit this button on this one. You're gonna wanna hit this button, which changes it to a line signal. Sometimes it'll be a button that says line. Sometimes it'll be just, a change between your input selection, mic or line. You wanna make sure it's line for instruments. Mic level only if, you're using a mic. Okay, so as simple as it is to record, sometimes it's really the setup that's the issue, where you don't have something plugged in right, or there's just a cable that's not working or something like that. There can be things like that where your cables just aren't working, or they're bad, or the power's not on. Just simple things that I overlook sometimes. So I'm gonna show you guys how I have everything set up to go into my computer here. So right here, this is the interface I use, the Apollo Twin X. It's similar. Every interface is similar. On the back end here is my ins, my outs, right? So you won't see this stuff. But what you want to do is, from this SE1, which we're going to pretend is your piano, right? Is on the back of whatever instrument you're using, it should have an output section here. So you want to make sure you just plug in the output, and it's just as simple as taking that output and putting it in the input of your interface. For today we're using interface 1, which is on the front. I could also plug it into the back if I wanted to. In reality, I could. Let's see. So now it's set to mic. So on this, I just have to hit the input and it changes it to line level. But usually, once you plug something in, especially to the front, it'll change it to an instrument input. Right, so we have it plugged in to our interface, and on these devices they usually have a volume control, like right here on this one is a volume control, how loud it's going to send the signal into your machine, right? If it doesn't, you're gonna have to turn your preamp on your interface up. Like for me, if I turn it up, it'll start buzzing like crazy. Turn your input up so you get a healthy level of signal. But back into Logic Pro. So we plugged our machine in, we plugged it into the input we wanted. For me, it was input 1. Change it to input 1. We're gonna have the audio output be output 1 and 2, and hit create. So this right here is a track from my SE1. Now, if I play it, I don't see anything at all. Nothing's coming in, no sound, nothing. What you want to do is you want to hit the I. This stands for input monitoring mode. So now I can hear it. So when I want to record it, all I have to do is hit the R, make sure it's flashing. That's telling you it's ready. And you can hit this big red circle, or you can hit R on your keyboard. And that's how you record right into Logic. So that's the simplest way of getting signal out of your machine into your interface, into Logic Pro. Let's say it's a stereo source. For me, it's not, but if it is, what you're gonna have to do is you can click here, and if it lists only 1, 2, 3, 4, it's like, oh, but it's a stereo source. You click this circle and it changes it into a stereo signal. So if I make a track here, we'll do inputs 4, right? But if I click here, now it's gonna be 3 and 4, or 5 and 6. So if you want to change a signal from mono to stereo in terms of your input, you just click that little circle there and it changes it, and now it'll take both of your inputs on one track. That's only if you have a stereo. I think for my dad's Roland, it is 2 cords coming out of it, and I plugged them into inputs 3 and 4. So what you would do is when you're making your track here, you would set the input, if it's like 5, you would set it to 3, and then you would hit the circles, and it'd be 3 and 4, and then again you'd hit the I and the R, and then it would record the stereo signal on one track. But let's say I have 2 instruments that are both mono instruments that I want to record at the same time. Like I want to play piano, but I also want to sing. We just make another track, make sure its input is whatever you plugged your mic into. For me, it's input 2, create. Let's call this mic, input, record. Now we can hear that. Let's go over here. Hit the circle or R on your keyboard, and then it should just be as simple as playing the stuff together in a terrible fashion. But yeah, so then that's just how to record from your instruments to the program, your vocal to the program. Yeah, that's as simple as I can make it without going too far in depth. We can make another video about once you record, comping, cutting, punching in, all that kind of stuff. But I will say, simple as it is to punch in, is you just have to go wherever you want. Just hit R again. And now it's punching in right there in the middle. And it comped your stuff together. So that's a different video, but if you did want to punch in, all you have to do is go to the part you want to punch in, hit R, and basically play when you feel like you need to punch in. Well, that is a simple video on how to get your instrument recorded into Logic Pro using Interface. Hopefully my 70-year-old father can understand this. I will be probably going over it again with him. But before the video ends, I just want to show you guys all the connections that I have put together in order for this to work on screen. So right here we have the synth I used, which is the SE1. It is a mono synthesizer with only one output, and it's a bit more complex than what my dad is talking about, because his instrument actually has outputs and makes sound, and it's a piano by itself, so he can trigger the sounds. This has to be triggered by something, so I use my MIDI controller running MIDI into the back, and I'll show you how that works. So for me, I had to take a MIDI cord and take it out the MIDI out of my controller, because I'm sending the triggering signals from this cable into the MIDI in of the SE1, right? So it's going in right here, the signal coming from this keyboard, traveling up this blue cable into here, triggering the sound, and then it comes out here into my interface. So I have that cable running here into my instrument input on the front, or I could plug it into the back here. Just to show you what that looks like, you can plug it into the back, and if you do that with any interface, when you go to the input, it's going to ask you what kind of input signal is this, right? Right now it's telling me it's mic. That's not right. I need it to be line. So click input, bam, now we're on line level. So it's just the same with this interface. I plug it in there, but I have to hit that guitar button in order for it to change to line. So we got that hooked up. We got our interface. Now, for a lot of people, the interface that you guys use is just a straight USB interface, right? Where you plug it in one end, just like this Arturia is. We plug in this end just straight into the side here, like a USB cable. And that's the same with my dad's Mode 2 M4. You just plug it in, make sure the lights turn on. I think it has a switch on it. Make sure the lights turn on. If it's turned on, it's good. You're good to go, And as long as those outputs that we set are showing up for you, you should be all good to go. Again, I hope that helps somebody somewhere, especially my dad, just getting your audio from your piano into Logic and just recording your ideas. And then I'll do another video on once you've recorded something, how to bounce it out, how to edit it, how to do all those things that are a bit more complicated. But for right now, I just wanted you to get the signal from your stuff into the program. Oh, I rolled the chair on my ankle. Woohoo! Oh, my heel. Oh my god. Anyway, I'm thinking I'm gonna do just like me making beats and putting them on YouTube as well for anybody who's interested in that. But thank you guys for watching, staying tuned or whatever. I hope this helped you, Dad. I really do. I don't know if I really botched it. Hopefully you can get your ideas recorded into Logic and send me the files and I can edit them for you. Anyway, thank you guys. Peace.